The sound of growling engines pierced the stillness of the early morning air. Each rev cut the calm like a knife, a chilling reminder that trouble was close. Dust rose up from the gravel road, swirling in the breeze, unveiling a pack of leather-clad bikers making their way toward a modest farm nestled at the foot of the hills. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields where corn waited patiently for harvest. But today, the bikers had come with an entirely different agenda. Jake Thompson stood at the edge of his property, weathered hands resting on his hips, eyes narrowing as the roar approached. His farm was more than just a stretch of land. It held decades of history, stitched together with the love of his family, his father, his grandfather, and those before them. Each crop planted, each fence built was a legacy. But in that moment, the ground seemed to tremble under the weight of potential destruction. The bikers rolled to a halt in a cloud of dust. The leader, a burly man with a thick beard and tattoos snaking up his arms, stepped forward. He called out, amusement dancing in his eyes. "We've decided this piece of land looks a little too lonely." Jake took a deep breath. His heart thundered, but he held firm. "This isn't some party ground for you to take over." The calm in his voice barely masked the storm brewing inside him. Laughter erupted from the group, the sound harsh and mocking, echoing through the fields. "Oh, buddy, you really think a little farmer can stop us?" With each word, the tension grew, wrapping around Jake's chest like a vice. They didn't see his farm as a home, they saw it as property to conquer. But Jake's family wasn't known for backing down from a fight, especially when it came to protecting what was theirs. The leader stepped closer, a sly grin on his face. "Or what, you'll call for help?" "Get the cops down here." He waved a hand dismissively, a statement meant to belittle Jake, to reduce him to just a man without power. That stung. But instead of backing down, Jake's resolve hardened. He remembered the countless nights spent under stars, listening to his father's stories about standing his ground. The sun began to rise higher, illuminating the creases of determination on his forehead. The bikers had only brought chaos, while he held stories of generations, tales rooted deep in the earth. And he wasn't just standing for himself, he was standing for every farmer who had ever faced the kind of intimidation they served up without a second thought. Just then, he spotted his old pickup truck parked nearby, just a few yards away, dusty but dependable, a relic of hard work. It was like an unspoken symbol, standing as testament to everything he had fought for. "You want a real fight? I've got something for you," he said, turning on his heel and heading towards it. The bikers exchanged glances, clearly surprised but undeniably intrigued. Jake hopped into the driver's seat, his heart pounding but his resolve unshakable. He turned the key, the engine roared to life, a sound that signaled they'd underestimated him. He backed the truck up, the wheels crunching gravel, the noise mingling with the laughter, now dimmed by a hint of realization. The lead biker shouted, waving his arms as Jake rolled toward them, determination evident in every inch of his posture. But Jake wasn't stopping for pleasantries. He knew they might not have expected that kind of pushback, and their bravado was beginning to crack. "You came here looking for trouble," he shouted out of the window, grabbing their attention from laughter to concern. The ground shook as the old truck bumped forward, ready to assert itself, not just as a vehicle, but as a guardian, the farmer's weapon against an uninvited threat. The pack of bikers began to scatter, bewildered by the transformation of their invincible facade into something more vulnerable. Jake shouted, his voice rising above the rumble of the engine. His resolve transformed the old farmyard into a battleground, his heart driven by pure survival instinct. One of the bikers, sensing the tide had turned, stepped forward again, hands raised. "Come on, man, we're just trying to have some fun." Jake's grip tightened on the wheel. "It's too late for that." There was something electrical in the air, a pivotal moment hanging in the balance. He wasn't just defending his land, he was signaling to them that they couldn't intimidate everyone into submission. The bickering among the bikers grew louder. They hadn't expected resistance. Their bravado had led them to believe this would be easy, an afternoon of chaos without repercussions. And now, with the sun blazing above them, with dust swirling like the weight of their choices, Jake stood as a symbol. A standoff ensued, tension building like coiling springs ready to snap. Yet in that moment, Jake's heart slowed as he caught a glimpse of something fierce. It flickered in the eyes of the bikers, a chink in their tough exterior. Perhaps they had seen too many moments where the line of control wavered, and they realized just how precarious their dominance really was. The lead biker swallowed hard. Okay, Jake sensed the shift. They were no longer driving the interaction. "You wait for your fun in the city or wherever it is you belong. Here we work." With a flick of his wrist, he engaged the clutch, the tires sending gravel flying as he revved the engine. It was electric. The riders who once mocked him were now caught off guard, feeling the nervous shift of circumstances inching away from their control. The leader's bravado began to falter. The change in tone was palpable. Jake brought the truck to a halt a few feet away, the wheels shifting awkwardly on the gravel, the engine's growl fading into silence. He climbed out, stepping down from the vehicle tall and imposing, but filled with the simmering strength of victory. He had pushed back and the bikers were fading into a memory, a mirage of chaos slipping away from his life. "I don't want to see you back here again," he said, the authority in his voice undeniable. You talk big, but when someone rises up against you. With that, the bikers began to retreat, unsure of the sounds and fury that exploded from the farmer they had underestimated. They were no longer the kings of the road, but mere shadows, gradually pulling away, enshrined in laughter that held a tremor of disbelief. Once they rounded the corner and disappeared from view, Jake let out a deep breath, the fear lifting away like a thick fog. As adrenaline coursed through him, he looked out over the fields. The wind whisked between the rows of corn, whispering tales of survival, of resilience, and pure grit. Each blade of grass swayed gently, mirroring the rhythm of his heartbeat, steady, forthright, alive. The warmth of the sun flooded down, and for the first time that morning it felt like a promise. He had asserted himself as the protector of his home, a fierce guardian who wasn't afraid to stand tall. Despite the chaos, a flicker of pride crept into his chest. He took a moment to appreciate the lessons that unfolded, reminding himself of the importance of standing up against those who would seize what wasn't theirs. And with that thought, he returned to the barn, the sunlight warming his back as he prepared for another day on the land he loved, a battlefield transformed into a sanctuary where he could always be victorious. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting an orange glow across the sprawling fields of corn that swayed gently in the warm breeze. Jake Thompson stood at the edge of his property, his hands calloused from years of hard work, feeling the weight of the moment. It was just another day on the farm, or so he thought. He took a deep breath, inhaling the rich smell of the earth mingled with the sweet hints of growing corn. But that tranquility was about to be shattered. The distant rumble of motorcycle engines broke through the serene chorus of birdsong. The growl grew louder, echoing unnaturally against the backdrop of the peaceful countryside. Jake squinted, trying to catch a glimpse of the commotion. A gang of bikers, dressed in leather jackets, tore down the gravel road toward his farm like a storm out of nowhere. His heart raced as the first bike kicked up dust, trailing behind it like a dark cloud. He knew this wasn't an ordinary visit. The last time he had encountered bikers, they were causing mayhem in town, flaunting their roughness like a badge of honor. Now they were here, engines roaring with an unsettling promise. Jake pushed his shoulders back and braced himself, refusing to yield. His farm had been in his family for generations, a sanctuary built by blood, sweat, and unwavering dedication. He wasn't about to let anyone take that away. As the group rolled to a halt, the leader hopped off his bike, a massive man with tattoos coiling up his arms and a sneer that could chill any defense. He barked, arms crossed over his bulging chest. "We're here to stake our claim." Jake threw back, his voice steady but laced with adrenaline. "This is my home." Laughter erupted among the bikers, a raucous sound that sent chills down Jake's spine. The leader continued, swaggering closer, eyes glinting with mischief. The word left a bitter taste on Jake's tongue. To them, it was just land. To him, it was legacy, history. He could feel the anger boiling inside, threatening to erupt like a volcano. But he had learned from years of hard work that the key to winning a battle often lay in calmness. "You've got it wrong," he said slowly, letting the tension build. The bikers exchanged glances, sensing a challenge. The leader shrugged off Jake's confidence with a laugh. "Come on, man, we're just here to have a good time." Jake's heart raced. "A good time for you might mean trouble for me. This isn't a playground," he shot back, his voice thick with defiance. The laughter dimmed, but the leader stood firm, sizing Jake up. "You think you can just scare us away?" The words dripped with arrogance like venom. In that moment, something deep within Jake snapped. His ancestors' voices echoed in his mind, reminding him of the countless times they had faced adversity. The farm had seen storms, droughts, and hard times, but it had also known resilience and strength. "You're right about one thing," Jake said, his tone low but fiery. "You've dealt with tough people." The bikers recoiled slightly, surprised by the shift. The leader taunted, trying to play it cool, but his eyes revealing a flicker of doubt. Jake's eyes locked onto theirs, unwavering. "You step one foot onto this farm and you'll regret it." Suddenly, the leader moved closer, towering over Jake. "You really think that talking tough is going to scare us away?" Jake took a step forward, his voice lowered to a fierce whisper. The air crackled with tension as the bikers took a moment to assess bluster against the calm resolve of the farmer. Seconds stretched like hours, each heartbeat echoing louder in Jake's ears. Just then, the engine of an old Ford pickup rumbled to life, breaking the silence. The sound grew louder, echoing from behind the barn. A shadow emerged, revealing his elder brother Tom, who had been out checking the east field. With his rugged appearance and imposing frame, Tom jumped out of the truck, a knowing fire igniting in his eyes as he assessed the situation. Tom's voice boomed, deep and commanding, a voice that had always instilled a sense of safety in Jake. It was as if a lion had joined the fight. The bikers shifted uneasily. "We're just having a little chat," the leader chuckled, but the bravado in his tone lacked conviction. "Looks more like you're trying to bully my brother," Tom shot back. The bikers hesitated. They hadn't anticipated this was a brother act. The dynamic had shifted dramatically in an instant. The two brothers were a formidable force, their bond forged through years of working the land together, always having each other's backs. "Maybe you should just turn around and leave," Jake added, stepping beside Tom, grounding himself in the confidence radiating from his brother. "You're outnumbered now." The bikers seemed to waver, glancing at each other with uncertainty. They were no longer just dealing with one relentless farmer, now there were two. They had ventured into the territory of a family that knew every inch of this land and were prepared to defend it. The leader, however, wasn't about to give up easily. "What do you think you're going to do?" Jake squared his shoulders. "Fear isn't power. What you're doing here is pathetic. You think you can take something that isn't yours. But it's not just about muscle, it's about heart." The tension was electric, almost tangible, as silence fell over the farm. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, aware that a pivotal moment was painting itself across the landscape. The bikers stared back, their laughter stilled, replaced by the quiet realization of what they were up against, a united front fortified by years of shared blood and sweat. Finally, the leader swallowed hard, attempting to maintain his cool. "All right, fine. We'll take a rain check," he conceded, shoving his hands into his pockets. The edges of his bravado were starting to fray. "Get off our property," Jake said firmly, a final warning etched in each word. The pack of bikers began to disperse, their swagger transformed into an awkward retreat. The leader turned back momentarily, eyes narrowed. "You haven't heard the last of us, farmer," he warned, but the words lacked the strength they once carried. As the last bike rumbled off into the distance, a wave of relief washed over Jake and Tom. The stillness of the air returned, the chaos vanishing like a bad dream. Jake inhaled deeply, letting the cool breeze fill his lungs. "We did it," he said, turning to Tom, gratitude shining in his eyes. Tom clapped a hand on his brother's shoulder, the bond between them palpable, fueled by the battles they had fought together. "Of course we did. This farm is our legacy, our life." As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow across the fields, the brothers stood side by side, surveying the land they loved. They knew the fight wasn't just for the crops or the buildings. It was for every memory, every hard-earned bit of soil beneath their feet. It was a fight for family, heart, and unyielding courage. On that day, they learned that strength didn't solely come from muscle or noise. It emerged from the roots of bravery and unity, reminders of the deep legacy planted in their lives. And so, as stars began to twinkle in the evening sky, Jake and Tom resumed their evening routine side by side. The battle had forged a deeper connection, and the farm, their resilient home, remained untouched, a refuge in a world that sometimes forgot the meaning of respect. With laughter echoing against the twilight, they headed back into the house. They were farmers, yes, but more than that, they were warriors of their land, and they would stand strong come what may. The bikers might have underestimated them, but never again would they dare challenge the heart of a farmer. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a warm glow over the rolling hills of the countryside, where quiet fields stretched out in waves of green. But the peace of the morning shattered as the unmistakable roar of motorcycle engines thundered down the dirt road, sending clouds of dust swirling into the air. Jake Thompson stood by his barn, squinting against the brightness as he tried to comprehend what was coming his way. A gang of bikers, about a dozen in total, clad in leather jackets and bandanas, pulled into the yard, tires kicking up gravel in their wake. This wasn't just a casual ride. The way they descended upon his farm felt like a storm brewing on the horizon. Jake's heart raced. He felt the ground beneath him shudder as if it sensed the incoming chaos. The leader was a hulking figure, his beard wild and unruly, tattoos spiraling down his arms like a map of battles fought. He called out, swaggering towards Jake with confidence, the glint of challenge in his eyes. "Looks like we found ourselves a nice piece of land here." Jake had seen trouble before, but this was something else entirely. He could feel the tension hanging in the air, an electric charge that screamed at him to act, to protect what was his. He shouted back, standing tall, fists clenched at his sides. The bikers erupted in laughter, a booming sound that echoed around the farm. "What are you gonna do, tough guy?" The leader taunted, eyes glimmering with amusement, as if he relished the amusement of picking a fight. For a moment, uncertainty swept over Jake. Facing down a group like this was daunting. But then he remembered his family, his father, who had stood strong against storms and flooding, who had faced down the toughest challenges with grit and determination. "Listen," Jake began, voice low and steady, "this isn't just land to me, it's my home. My family built this place, and I'll fight to keep it." There was a stillness, an unheard pause as the bikers considered the resolve in his voice. The laughter faltered, the tension shifting. "Come on now," the leader said, a hint of annoyance creeping into his tone. "Don't overestimate yourself, farmer. We're a long way from home, and we know how to have a good time." Jake took a deep breath, grounding himself in the moment. He had fought for this land through droughts, floods, and harsh winters. Their bravado felt like a direct assault on every struggle he had endured. He shot back, stepping forward, refusing to back down. Each word ignited tension, wrapping around them like a thick fog. The bikers shifted, exchanging glances, sensing that Jake wasn't the pushover they had hoped for. He continued. The leader smirked, but his eyes flickered with a hint of hesitation. "You're outnumbered, buddy." Jake felt the adrenaline surge, heightening his senses. "You underestimate me, and that's your first mistake." With a flicker of determination, he turned and pointed toward the barn, a stronghold of memories. "You want this place?" The bikers chuckled again, but the sound felt half-hearted. "All talk and no action. Sounds like the farmer stereotype to me," the leader retorted, trying to regain some ground. But Before Jake could respond, an unexpected sound drifted from the back of the barn, the unmistakable roar of an engine. It was Jake's brother, Tom, returning from the field. The old pickup truck lumbered into view, pulling up just behind Jake. Seeing the two brothers together illuminated a new sense of strength. Tom jumped out of the truck, a broad-shouldered man with a steel-like determination etched into his features. He scanned the scene and took a step forward, standing next to Jake, their unity palpable. He asked, brows knitting together in concern. "Just a little chat about the future of your land," the leader sneered, trying to pull himself together, but the glint of unease was unmistakable. Tom crossed his arms over his chest, voice like thunder. "You'll need to find another target." Now, the bikers' laughter was edged with anxiety. They hadn't considered that both brothers would stand united. Their confidence wavered like a flag in a heavy wind. The balance of power had shifted like night into day. The leader tried reclaiming some bravado, but the falter was clear. "No, it's a promise," Jake replied, eyes steely, unyielding. The tension thickened, wrapping around them like a storm cloud, the air charged with unspoken challenges. A couple of the bikers shifted, glancing unsurely at their leader, questioning their thin veneer of confidence. The leader finally huffed, stepping back. "We'll back off this time, but don't think this is over." "We'll be watching you, farmer," he warned, attempting to preserve some semblance of dignity. Tom called after him, his voice echoing through the fields as the bikers turned their bikes around, kicking up dust in their wake. As the noise of their engines faded into the distance, silence enveloped the farm. Jake and Tom stood side by side, breathing in the stillness, victorious for the moment. "You really showed them," Tom said, a smile breaking through his previously serious demeanor. "I had to stand my ground," Jake replied, uncertainty flickering in his chest now that the adrenaline was ebbed. "Yeah, but they hadn't met this family before," Tom reassured him. The sun dipped lower in the sky, painting an orange glow across the fields, bringing with it a sense of calm. Yet deep inside, Jake felt a knot of unease unraveling. Would the bikers actually return? How far would they go to assert their dominion? Days passed, turning into weeks, and life on the farm returned to its peaceful rhythm. The harvest was around the corner, the work endless but fulfilling. But in the back of his mind, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that looming darkness was waiting. One evening, as the sky blazed with the hues of sunset, a rumble of engines crescendoed in the distance. Jake's heart sank. "It's them," he whispered, his stomach twisting with nerves. Tom appeared beside him, arms crossed firmly. His face was a mask of focus and determination. The bikers didn't just ride up this time, they roared onto the property like a whirlwind. Numbers increased, their confidence swelling with their audacity. The gang pulled up at the barn, a spectacle of leather and steel, laughter spilling into the air like poison. The leader shouted, clearly reveling in the chaos. Jake remained calm. He had prepared for this. "You're not welcome here. Leave." The leader stepped forward, aggression simmering in his expression. Or what? Just then, Jake and Tom stepped forward together, mirrors of strength and unity. "You may be loud, but you're not going to bully us here," Tom asserted, voice low but steady, echoing the fierce love for their land. The gang shifted, caught off guard. Perhaps they hadn't anticipated such fortitude from the brothers. Another biker asked, trying to unwind the tension, the bravado waning. "Your foray into invasion needs to conclude now," Tom replied. "This is not an arena for you." The leader's face darkened, rage bubbling beneath the surface. "I'm not just talking," Jake said, his voice resolute, echoing with an authority born of generations of farmers. With the threat palpable in the air, Jake felt something shift within him. He turned and gestured toward the barn where the family tools rested, remnants of hard work waiting to defend their legacy. Then something remarkable. Instead of responding, the leader hesitated, his bravado beginning to crumble as he assessed the brothers. There was an innate truth in their resolve, a fire that ignited something inside him, a flicker of respect born from their defiance. Yet he was not about to back down completely. "You've got guts, farmer," he said, shifting his weight, eyes narrowing. "But you know what?" Jake squared off, meeting his gaze head-on. "But they scare you enough to think twice about what happens next." The word family hung in the air like a banner, and in that moment the bikers began to shift, uncertainty clouding the tales of bravado they had brought with them. With a heavy sigh, the leader stepped back, glancing at his gang, seeking reassurance. "You'll regret this," he finally called, but his voice lacked the conviction it once held. As the gang turned their bikes, engines roaring to life, Jake felt an incredible rush of relief mixed with adrenaline. They were leaving behind chaos, and they had faced it down as a family. Weeks became months, and the harvest was bounteous that season. Those bikers were never seen again. Jake often found himself reflecting on that day, understanding the lessons rooted deep within that confrontation. They had stood their ground, and more importantly, they had faced down fear together. Standing shoulder to shoulder with his brother at the edge of their property, Jake took a deep breath, letting the air fill his lungs with promise. The fields flourished under the sun, a rich reminder of everything they had fought for: a sanctuary, a legacy, and a family bond that nothing could ever break. In this world where uncertainty looms large and chaos often prowls at the edges, the Thompson brothers had learned that strength isn't measured by physical might alone. It lies within the heart, the courage to stand up when faced with the storm, and the unity forged through love and commitment. As the sun descended behind the hills, the brothers knew that whatever came next, they would be ready to face it together. After all, this land was theirs, not just soil and crops, but a symbol of their triumph over fear. They had pushed back and emerged stronger, and the echoes of their victory would resonate across the fields for generations to come. The sun had barely risen, casting a golden hue over the quiet farmland, when the low rumble of motorcycle engines broke through the morning stillness. It was a sound that sent a wave of dread coursing through Jake Thompson's veins. He hurriedly wiped his hands on his worn jeans as he turned to face the approaching dust cloud, knowing deep down that trouble was riding in with it. As the first bike rolled into view, a massive beast of chrome and leather, Jake's heart sank. More bikes followed, a raucous parade of leather jackets and tattoos, glinting in the early light. A gang, a full-blown motorcycle club, descending upon his land like a tempest. He had heard stories about these bikers, wild men who rode hard and took what they wanted. But this was his home, his father's land, and there was no way he would let them just waltz in and claim it. The leader of the group, a brute of a man with a thick beard and intimidating tattoos snaking up his arms pulled up right in front of Jake. The bikers dismounted, swaggering like they owned the place. The leader called, a smug grin plastered on his face. "We've decided this here patch of dirt looks a little too quiet." Jake's jaw tightened. "This isn't up for negotiation. You can turn around and leave." Laughter erupted from the group, harsh and mocking, echoing off the barn's weathered walls. The leader stepped closer, towering over Jake like a storm cloud. "What's a little farmer like you going to do? You think you can kick us off?" Jake took a slow breath, feeling the weight of generations of his family buried in that soil. This land wasn't just dirt, it held every memory, every sacrifice made by his forefathers. "You don't understand who you're dealing with," he said, his voice steady. The bikers exchanged glances, surprised momentarily by Jake's fierce resolve. "He thinks he can scare us," one snickered, but even that laugh had a quiver to it. The leader barked, swinging his arm dramatically. "You're outnumbered here, old man." A part of Jake wanted to retreat, to lock up the farm and run, but then he thought of his father, how he'd faced countless storms over the years, never once backing down. "I'm not going anywhere," he declared, stepping forward, his chest out. "This is my land." The confrontation hung in the air, thick and tense. The leader's bravado flickered, but he quickly recovered, confidence seeping back in. "You think you can take us all on? You're just a farmer." Jake's heart raced. They didn't see him as a man. To them, he was a cliché. He clenched his fists, fighting against the tide of doubt swelling within. "Well, let me show you what a farmer can do," he said, voice steady as steel. He turned and made his way back toward the barn, drawing the biker's attention. With that, he ducked inside, feeling the cool air wash over him. He grabbed the old, trusty shotgun hanging above the tools. The wood was as familiar as an old friend, and as he cradled it in his hands, his resolve solidified. Stepping back outside, Jake found the gang still standing there, their laughter dying down as uncertainty crept in. They hadn't expected this. "I'd leave if I were you," Jake warned, his voice calm but powerful. The leader's bravado faltered. "You wouldn't dare try me," Jake cut him off, leveling the shotgun towards the sky. The act wasn't just a show of force, it was a declaration. The bikers shifted uneasily, and Jake felt a jolt of confidence surge through him. In that moment, they were not just farmers and bikers, they were two opposing forces, both fighting for what they believed was theirs. Then out of the corner of his eye, Jake saw movement, a figure coming down the hill. It was Tom, his brother, racing toward them from the east field. Heavyset and muscular, Tom had the same fierce determination etched across his face. He shouted as he neared, breathless. "It's fine, just a little welcome party," Jake responded, trying to keep his tone light, but the tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Once Tom reached them, he quickly assessed the situation, ready for a showdown. "You mess with one of us, you mess with both," he stated firmly, positioning himself beside Jake. The leader's bravado began to evaporate in the face of unified strength. What started as a raucous display of power now felt like a cage closing in on them, the gang's facade slowly crumbling. "Maybe we should just leave," one of the bikers muttered, looking increasingly uncomfortable. But the leader wasn't ready to back down completely. He growled, but the tremor in his voice betrayed his uncertainty. Jake and Tom shared a quick glance, an understanding passing between them, a brotherly bond that couldn't be broken. Tom stepped forward, shoulders squared. "This is our land. Our family has worked it for generations, feeding the community and tending to the earth." With that, the bikers shifted, unease rippling through their ranks. They hadn't expected to find real resistance here, a family willing to stand its ground. "Come on, man, we didn't mean anything by it," the leader finally said, wavering slightly. Jake challenged, stepping forward with firm footing. "This isn't a fairground, and I'm not about to let anyone trample over what my family built." The leader opened his mouth, but the words faltered. The once confident group of bikers now stood in a small circle of uncertainty. Jake could almost see the wheels turning in their minds, deciding whether to drop their egos and take the wiser path or to push forward into uncertainty. Finally, with a huff, the leader waved his hand dismissively. Fine, we're leaving, but don't think this is over. Not if I can help it, Jake replied, holding his ground even as the leader swung his leg over his bike and mounted it. With a mix of revving engines and fading voices, the bikers turned and sped off down the dirt road, trailing dust behind them like a promise of conflict unresolved. As the last bike disappeared from view, the brothers let out a collective breath they hadn't realized they were holding. That was too close, Tom said, shaking his head. Thanks, Jake replied, adrenaline still coursing through his veins. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing day, tension hung in the air like an uninvited guest. They went about their work on the farm, even as the harvest loomed closer, aware of the bikers' threat. Jake's nightmares were filled with leather-clad figures encroaching on his land, hoping to take his hard work underfoot. Then came the day when their worst fears materialized. The morning was crisp, painted in shades of orange and yellow, when the sound of roaring engines echoed down the road once more. This time there were more bikes, twice as many as before. Jake and Tom exchanged frantic glances, hearts racing. Here we go again, Jake said, dread pooling in his stomach. But this time there was a spark of resolve in him, older than he was, a legacy from those before him. They stepped outside, facing the swarm of bikers with a mix of fear and determination, the air charged with an unmistakable gravity. The leader emerged from the group, grinning widely as if today would be different. Hey there, farmers, we're not asking this time, we're claiming our party, he sneered, stepping forward. Jake held his ground. Without waiting for a response, he and Tom moved forward, a united front against the wave of chaos. The bikers surrounded them, but a flicker of uncertainty danced in the leader's eye when he saw the brothers standing shoulder to shoulder, unwavering. We are not just farmers, we're fighters, Jake declared. What ensued was a tense standoff, the brothers' resolve clashing against the bikers' arrogance. Each moment stretched, heavy with the weight of stakes rising. The leader's bravado began to wane under the fierce gaze of Jake and Tom. The air felt electrified, each beat of Jake's heart aligning with an ancestral rhythm. He could almost hear his father's voice guiding him. The bikers shifted awkwardly, each glancing at their leader, seeking reassurance. You guys are too soft for this, the leader declared, but his voice sounded empty. Fine, you want this place? Jake retaliated, fear giving way to strength. The leader sighed, visibly faltering. Had expected easy prey, not this fierce challenge to their claimed dominance. A moment hung in time, the bikers' laughter faded into the tension surrounding them. All eyes were locked in an unyielding confrontation, a test of wills. Finally, like a shadow retreating from dawn, the leader backed down. You might have won this time, he muttered, waving his hand dismissively as he spun on his heel, mounting his bike once again. Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him as the engine roars faded into the distance. Victory was theirs, but it felt bittersweet. They knew challenges like this would keep coming, that their fight wouldn't end here. But standing there, the brothers realized something powerful. They had confronted fear together and found strength in their unity. The fight was their legacy, a testament to their family. In the days that followed, they cultivated the farm with an unwavering spirit. No longer did Jake feel the weight of anxiety with every distant engine roar. They learned that strength grows in cultivating bonds and defending what is sacred, home, family, heart. And as they watched the corn rise tall and strong against the backdrop of the sunset, they found peace not just in what they had protected, but in who they had become. Through storm and strife, they stood as warriors of their land, bonded by the fire of their convictions and the sheer will to thrive. Fortified by the trials faced, Jake and Tom embraced the shadows of uncertainty that life tossed their way, knowing that together they could stand against any force. This was their home, and they were its guardians, fearless and united against the storms that may come. The low rumble of motorcycle engines echoed down the dirt road, slicing through the early morning peace like a knife. Jake Thompson stood in his field, the dew still glistening on the blades of grass as the sound of growling engines drew nearer. He squinted toward the horizon, a prickle of unease crawling up his spine. A dozen bikers rolled into view, a wild pack of leather and chrome, dust swirling up in their wake. Each bike snarled like a beast set free, riding toward the modest farmhouse that had stood for generations. Jake's heart thudded in his chest. This wasn't just a casual visit. It felt like a storm was brewing, a tempest of chaos descending upon his family's land. Came a voice, harsh and mocking. The leader, a hulking figure with a beard like twisted roots and tattoos sprawling up his arms, waved an arm, gesturing for the others to gather around. Jake took a step closer, grounding himself in the rich earth beneath his feet. You're not welcome here. Turn around and leave, he shot back, a wave of defiance rising within him. His family had worked this land with pride, and he wasn't about to let anyone take it away without a fight. Laughter erupted from the group, a cacophony of amusement that harshly disrupted the calm of the farm. The leader stepped forward, closing the distance. What are you going to do, old man? Jake stood firm, fists clenched. This is my home, not your playground. The leader's smirk faltered for a fleeting moment, but he quickly masked it with bravado. You think you can scare us off? The gang gathered around, their sneers fueling Jake's resolve. Fun doesn't come at the expense of others, Jake retorted, his voice steady even as adrenaline pulsed through him. Memories of long nights spent repairing fences, planting seeds, and harvesting crops flooded his mind. This farm was woven into the fabric of his family's history. He wouldn't let some bikers come in and tear that apart. Feeling the weight of the moment, Jake scanned the bikers, watching as they shifted uneasily, their laughter waning under the intensity of his gaze. "You don't know who you're dealing with," he warned, eyes locked onto the leader, whose bravado faltered slightly. The leader growled, stepping closer, inches away from Jake's personal space. Jake scoffed. For a heartbeat, tension hung thick in the air, cutting deeper than any knife. Jake's heart raced, but he stood tall, drawing strength from the generations of farmers who had faced adversity without flinching. This was not just a piece of land, it was a legacy. "Listen," the leader finally said, trying to reestablish control. "We could turn this place into something great, you just need to step aside." "By tearing up the only home I've ever known? Not a chance," Jake replied, his voice low but firm. It was in this moment of confrontation that a familiar noise broke through the tension, the sound of an old pickup truck rumbling down the road. Jake turned to see his brother Tom barreling toward them. Tom had been working in the fields, covered in dirt and dust from a long day's labor. Tom's voice thundered as he climbed out of the truck, eyes narrowing at the scene unfolding before him. "Just a little misunderstanding," Jake replied with a forced calmness, but inside he was bracing for the worst. Seeing the gang of bikers, Tom's expression shifted from curiosity to anger. "You guys need to get off our property," he said, stepping beside Jake. The air thickened with a powerful combination of brotherly strength and defiance. The leader stepped back, glancing briefly at his crew. "We're not afraid of you, farmers." Jake felt a surge of determination. Suddenly, the bikers didn't seem so confident. Tom, standing tall and sturdy beside Jake, projected a force that couldn't be easily disregarded. The bikers were wild but not foolish. They could feel the unmistakable tension charging the air, the kind that hinted at an electrifying confrontation. The leader asked, trying to regain his bravado. Tom challenged, his eyes sharp as daggers. "Do you want to know what you're up against? We're not just farmers." The bikers' bravado looked more like a mask slipping. Whispers traveled within their ranks, hesitations surfacing as they rode along the line of fear and audacity. Then one of the younger bikers, seemingly caught in a moment of clarity, pushed through and stood by the leader's side. "Maybe we should just go. They look ready to fight," he said, glancing nervously at the brothers. The leader shot him a glare, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. He scoffed, but his voice held less conviction than before. Without a word, the brothers squared their shoulders, embodying an unyielding strength that echoed through the air. Jake replied, fingers clenched at his sides. As the standoff intensified, a flicker of realization passed over the leader's face. This wasn't the easy target they had anticipated. This was a family grounded deep and ready to defend their home. With a reluctant grunt, the leader turned and hopped back on his bike. "You're not going to hear the last of us," he shouted over the rumbling engines, but even as he said it, doubt peppered his tone. The rest of the gang followed suit, revving their engines as they pulled away, leaving the brothers in a cloud of dust and uncertainty. Jake and Tom stood side by side, feeling the tension evaporate slowly but deeply. They had pushed back, and for now they had won. In the days that followed, Jake couldn't shake the anxiety coiling tight in his chest. He started to dread the familiar sound of engines rumbling in the distance, always questioning whether today would be the day the bikers returned, desperate for revenge. Weeks passed and the harvest season approached. The fields glimmered golden under the autumn sun, and for a brief moment, Jake found solace in the endless rows of corn and wheat. But then, one crisp morning filled with promise, the rumble echoed once more, familiar and foreboding. The sound washed over him like a wave, sending chills down his spine. "Here we go again," he muttered to Tom, who was already scanning the horizon, his jaw tight with preparedness. "I'll handle this," Tom said, stepping forward as the gang rolled into view. Their numbers swelled again. This time they seemed bolder, almost cocky. The leader waved nonchalantly, a grin plastered across his face. "Well, look who it is, the farmers still holding their ground." "Never, you are not welcome here," Jake snapped, but his voice didn't carry the weight it had before. He could feel the fear curling around him again. The bikers laughed, and it felt like a storm raging on the horizon, a reminder of chaos ready to descend. The leader shouted, his tone dripping with cruel amusement as he rode closer, inching toward Jake. "Fun? You have a funny way of showing it," Jake replied, his composure wavering as he felt the heat rising within him. "Look at this loser," one of the bikers called, leaning back with an exaggerated yawn. "You think you can protect this place against all of us?" Tom retorted, stepping forward, fists clenched tightly by his side. They exchanged harsh words that only fueled the tension. But somewhere in the chaos, an idea struck Jake. He shouted, drawing the group's attention. "Let's settle this then. No weapons, just a good old-fashioned contest. If you win, you can do whatever you want." The leader hesitated, glancing around at his crew, sensing the shift. He was cocky but not stupid. He called, and Jake felt the tide turning slightly. "A race," Jake replied, determination setting in, "from here to the river and back." Laughter bubbled up from the bikers. The leader scoffed, but beneath the bravado was a flicker of doubt. Perhaps they sensed that the Thompsons were not just mere farmers. Let the best man win, Jake said, crossing his arms, a spark of confidence inside him. With a reluctant, begrudging agreement, the bikers gathered their bikes, revving the engines as both sides prepared for the standoff. The river wasn't too far, and the race would be fast and furious. But deep down, Jake felt a sudden surge of hope. This was something he could do. Perhaps they could channel the wild energy instead of standing frozen in fear. As the whistle blew, Jake gripped the handlebars of his bike tightly. He soared forward, the wind whipping past him like an exhilarating rush, and for a moment he felt alive, invincible. Every rev of the engine ignited a wild adrenaline that cut loose fears that had been lingering in his mind. The bikers shot ahead, but Jake didn't let that dampen his spirit. He focused on the narrow dirt path that led to the river, the adrenaline surging through him like electric current. The smell of earth and engine oil blended into a chaotic melody that shot straight through to his core. It felt like a race for more than just land. It was a race for pride, a race for his family, a race for legacy. As he accelerated, he could feel the fight within him morphing, directing the pent-up energy towards something that felt right, something cathartic. He could hear the thundering engines behind him, but didn't let it deter his focus. As he rounded the bend, he caught a glimpse of the river sparkling ahead, and adrenaline surged in a fierce wave. The finish line was in sight. He pushed harder on the accelerator, racing forward into an unknowing future. Suddenly, he heard a roar of engines right on his tail. The leader was close, but Jake tapped into something deep within himself, a primal instinct sparked by years of fighting for this land. He wasn't going to back down, not now. With sheer determination, he surged ahead, straining toward the river. His heart seemed to echo with the roar of the engines, but he wouldn't let fear guide him. He was going to win. With a final burst of effort, he crossed the makeshift finish line, first dust swirling behind him like a banner of victory. He had done it. They had done it. Jake looked back, seeing the shock registering in the faces of the bikers. They hadn't expected this. The leader's expression twisted from triumph to disbelief as he realized that they had lost. As the bikers slowed and turned their machines around, Jake felt the weight of victory settle upon him. They had pushed back not just through strength, but through wit and perseverance. They had stood their ground and conquered fear, weaving a new chapter into their family's legacy. As he turned his bike back toward home, Jake could see the fields stretching out before him, alive and vibrant under the afternoon sun. It felt like a silent promise. This land was theirs, and nothing could take it away. Weeks went by, and the sound of engines that once sent shockwaves of anxiety now felt like the distant rumble of clouds on the horizon, foreboding, yet far enough away to keep him grounded in the present. They had faced the storm and had emerged stronger, ready to face whatever would come next. Tom stood with him one evening as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in colors of fire. "You did good out there," he said, clapping Jake on the back. "We did good, together," Jake replied, a flicker of pride igniting within him. He looked out across the fields, the waves of golden grain swaying in the breeze, each stalk standing tall against the twilight. It was a testament to their survival, to their unity. And so they continued to work the land, knowing that whatever storms may come, they would face them together. The bikers had tried to claim the farm, but Jake and Tom had pushed back. They had become more than just farmers. They had become warriors of their land, unbreakable and fiercely devoted to protecting the legacy that flowed through every inch of soil beneath their feet. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting a golden hue over the open fields of Thompson Farm. The air was still, as if the world was holding its breath. Jake Thompson stood in the barn, wiping sweat from his brow, reveling in the tranquility of a hot summer day. But that peace was about to shatter like glass. A distant rumble cut through the calm. At first, it was faint, a low growl that grew louder, more aggressive. Jake paused, sensing a storm on the horizon. He stepped outside, squinting towards the road. A line of motorcycles appeared, glinting in the sunlight, kicking up dust behind them like a vengeful spirit rising from the earth. His heart raced. Who would be out there at this hour? As they drew nearer, Jake felt a knot form in his stomach. This wasn't just a group of riders. No, this was a gang, leather jackets, bandanas, and an air of trouble that rolled off them like the heat from the asphalt. They were a whirlwind of noise and chaos, and they were headed straight for his farm. Before he could think, they stormed up the drive, engines roaring as they came to a stop in front of the barn. The leader, a hulking man with tattoos that told stories of battles and wild nights, dismounted first, swaggering with confidence that felt all too threatening. He called, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. "We've decided this place would make a perfect hangout for us." Jake straightened his back, rising to meet the challenge. He had grown up on this land, learned every inch of it from his father, and inherited not just the dirt but the spirit of resilience. "This is my home," Jake replied firmly. "You need to leave." The laughter from the gang cascaded down like a waterfall, harsh and unforgiving. "Home, this old farm." The leader stepped closer, invading Jake's space, a predatory gleam in his eye. "Step back," Jake warned, the tension rising around them like a coiled spring. "I won't say it again." Leader taunted, throwing an arm around one of his friends, clearly loving the bravado of the situation. "What are you gonna do? Call the cops, they'll laugh, a farmer against a crew like us." Jake felt the heat of anger flare inside him, but he knew he had to keep a cool head. He had seen battles before, farmers banding together under oppressive odds, finding strength in solidarity. "You don't know who you're messing with," he shot back, his heart pounding. "My family has worked this land for generations." The bikers paused, surprised. Just one farmer, the leader sneered, but now there was a hint of uncertainty in his voice. They had expected an easy target. Jake shot back, recalling tales of resilience woven through the fabric of every laborer who toiled in the fields. "You think this is just a field?" As Jake stood his ground, doubt began to flicker in the eyes of the bikers, but the leader wasn't done yet. "We could take this place and turn it into our own party central." With a deep breath, Jake glanced around, picturing his beloved farm, his father's old tools rusting in the shed, the crops just beginning to flourish, the memories etched into every corner of the land. "You want to party? Not here," he replied, a steely resolve saturating his words. At that moment, out of the corner of his eye, he spotted movement. His brother Tom had come sauntering up from the field, dirty from the day's labor. He noticed the biker gang and his expression immediately turned serious. Tom shouted, marching toward them with purpose. "Just a little discussion," Jake said, keeping his voice level but feeling the tension swell in the air. Without missing a beat, Tom stepped beside Jake, fists clenched at his sides. Towered over the leader, his strong frame radiating a sense of unshakable confidence. Tom demanded, voice low and steady. The leader shifted nervously, perhaps realizing that this was no longer a game. "We're just here for a good time, don't get your knickers in a twist," he tried, but even he could see that the resolve in the brother's eyes was unwavering. "Your good time doesn't involve trespassing," Jake interjected, determination hardening his voice. "Leave now, and maybe you can save some face." The laughter from the gang faded into silence, uncertainty blooming in its place. They glanced at one another, sizing up the formidable opposition. The leader's bravado began to crack, revealing glimmers of doubt. He demanded, but the strength in the brother's stance spoke volumes. "I know we can," Tom growled, fists still poised for whatever might come next. Jake could feel the energy shifting, and in that moment he sensed it, the fear that crept into the hearts of the bikers. They hadn't expected resistance, hadn't anticipated the fire from those who held their ground. "Fine," the leader finally conceded, stepping back reluctantly. "We'll clear out, but this isn't over. Don't let the door hit you on the way out," Jake called after him as the bikers mounted their machines, engines roaring back to life. As they rolled away, dust swirling behind them, Jake felt a rush of relief wash over him. "I can't believe they tried that," Tom muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. "For now," Jake replied, his heart still racing. Days turned into weeks, and the farm continued its seasonal rhythm, a cycle of sowing and reaping. The brothers worked diligently, harvesting crops and maintaining the land they loved. But the memory of the bikers lingered like a shadow, the unease settling heavy in the pit of Jake's stomach. One warm evening, a familiar rumble shattered the tranquility. Jake stiffened as he stood in their field, glancing toward the dirt road. The sound was unmistakable, a pack of bikes charging their way, engines roaring as if they owned the earth beneath them. "Not again," Tom grumbled, his expression darkening. Quickly, the brothers strode toward the sound, ready to defend what was theirs. They stopped at the edge of the yard, eyes locked on the pack as the bikers pulled in, a cloud of dust swirling around them like a rolling storm. This time, a few more bikers joined their ranks, a solid wall of leather and metal that felt menacing. The leader dismounted again, a twisted smile on his face as he approached. "We're back. Missed you." "Definitely not," Jake replied, his heart pounding as he faced the encroaching danger. "Oh, just to remind you who owns this land," the leader chuckled, his eyes glinting with malice. "No chance," Tom growled, stepping in front of Jake, protective instincts flaring. "You're not welcome here, just as before." "The cops won't come to save you this time," the leader taunted, moving closer. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife, the air charged with a fierce energy that crackled around them. Jake and Tom exchanged a glance, their unyielding bond grounding them. Jake said, voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside. Laughter erupted from the bikers, but it rang hollow, revealing cracks in their facade. The leader stepped forward again, trying to overpower the brothers' resolve. "You think you can take us on?" The sun hung low, casting long shadows, and the brothers stood as a fortified wall against this onslaught. "Tough doesn't mean right," Jake said, voice amplified by determination. "Fine," the leader spat, frustration evident. "You'll regret crossing us." With that, the bikers turned on their heels, engines roaring as they retreated, leaving the brothers behind in a cloud of dust. Jake's heart raced, relief and anger wrestling within him. The return of their adversaries had opened old wounds, but they had pushed back yet again. "They'll keep coming until we do something about it," Tom said, a heavy seriousness in his tone. "Then we need a plan," Jake replied, eyes narrowing. "We need to show them we are more than just farmers, we are custodians of this land." In the days that followed, the brothers began preparing. They reinforced their barriers, sharpened their tools, and gathered allies from neighboring farms. It was no longer just about protecting their land, it was about standing up for every farmer who had ever faced adversity. The bikers didn't come back immediately, but Jake could sense the gathering storm on the horizon. Tension crackled in the air, a standoff waiting to erupt. Weeks later, on an uncertain Friday evening, the rumble returned. Jake stood in the field as the sound of engines cut through the quiet, sending a jolt of adrenaline racing through him. He turned to see bikes speeding down the dirt road. This time they were here with more force, ready to settle the score. "Prepare yourself," Tom warned as they stood side by side once more, their hearts synced in unison. As the bikers skidded to a halt, Jake took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. He called out, drawing the attention of the leather-clad riders all over again. "Just here to claim what's ours," the leader retorted, a cruel smile stretching wide across his face. "You've been warned, farmer. No, this is our land." Jake stood firm, his voice steady and full of resolve. In that moment, the air thickened once more, tension spiraling around them. The brothers had done everything they could to prepare, but now they stood at the precipice, ready to defend what mattered most. "Then we'll settle this like men," the leader growled, shifting his stance. He didn't back down. He stepped closer, challenging Jake with a flicker of menace. "We don't need to fight," Jake said, raising a hand. Tom nodded, the brothers moving as a united front, projecting strength. "Name your terms," Jake said. The leader hesitated, but then smirked. "How about a race, from here to the next field and back? If your farm holds, you win." Jake felt the challenge echo deep within him. This could be the fight they needed to reclaim their legacy. "Agreed," he said, adrenaline rushing through him. Victory was within reach if they could just prove themselves. The gang of bikers gathered, their engines roaring in anticipation as they prepared for the race. The brothers revved their own bikes, ready for anything that would come next. This was the moment to prove their worth, not just for their farm, but to stand steadfast against any storm. As the whistle blew, Jake and Tom took off down the dirt road, their bikes surging forward as the wind whipped through their hair. They felt alive, invigorated by the rush of competition. The challenges ahead melded into an exhilarating spirit that fueled their journey, but the bikers were close behind, relentless in their pursuit. Every twist and turn felt significant, a test of courage and skill. Jake shouted as they pushed their machines to the limit. The finish line was in sight, their farm blossomed just beyond, a sun-drenched beacon symbolizing all that they fought for. With one final surge, they crossed first, the roar of the bikers fading into disbelief. They had done it. They had reclaimed their land. The bikers slowed, their shock evident as they recognized defeat. They hadn't expected the brothers to fight back with such tenacity. The leader's face twisted in anger, but beneath it lay a trace of respect, something flickering that couldn't be ignored. "This isn't over," he muttered bitterly, the gang eventually retreating, leaving the brothers in a haze of victory. As they stood on their own land, exhilaration drank deep from their souls. They hadn't just raced, they had established an unbreakable line, a boundary drawn in determination and loyalty. From that day on, Jake and Tom stood vigilant over their farm, fortified by the knowledge that their bond ran deeper than any threat they might face. The specter of the bikers no longer haunted them. They had faced down their fears, refused to blink first, and emerged victorious. In the days that followed, the world felt expansive, a landscape filled with possibility, resilience, and strength. As they worked their land, the brothers knew that whatever came next, they would face it as one, united against the storms of uncertainty. Forged in the fires of challenge, their spirits rose like a phoenix to meet each dawn, and their legacy, deeply rooted in the soil, would carry them through any fight. They had pushed back against the tide, and together they would always rise. The sun hung low, bathing the fields in a warm golden glow, but the serenity was shattered as a distant roar began to ripple through the quiet landscape. Jake Thompson paused, his hands sticky with dirt from the day's labor, as the sound grew louder, more threatening. It was a low rumble that churned in his stomach, an unmistakable sign of trouble heading his way. He squinted at the horizon, shaking his head slowly as dark figures began to emerge, bikes roaring into view like a pack of wolves on the hunt. His heart raced as he recognized what it was, a gang of bikers, leather-clad and exuding an unmistakable air of chaos, rolling toward his farm with a wildness that twisted his gut. What could they possibly want? Still, he stood his ground, the weight of generations of farmers behind him. This land was his family's legacy, a patch of earth that had seen droughts, hard winters, and good years of crops. As the first bike screeched to a halt, a tall man stepped off, his build intimidating, tattoos crawling up his arms like dark vines. He hollered, a cocky grin spreading across his rugged face. Jake echoed incredulously, stepping closer, fists clenched at his sides. "You're on my property." Laughter erupted from the group, a cruel sound that twisted in his gut. The leader said, swaggering forward, closing the distance. Jake felt a surge of anger rise within him. "This isn't just land to me, it's my home." He could feel heat coursing through his veins, fueled by the hard work and love for this soil, the endless hours spent planting, nurturing, and harvesting. "Let's not make this harder than it needs to be," the leader replied, stepping even closer, intimidation in his eyes. "We could have some fun here, turn this place into a real show." The other bikers had closed ranks behind him, their laughter mingling with their leader's arrogance. But something about Jake's stance, the determination etched on his face, made a few of them hesitate. They hadn't expected a confrontation like this. They had probably anticipated submission, fear. "Listen," Jake said, forcing every ounce of authority into his voice, "you've messed with the wrong farmer." The leader shot back, but Jake could see the uncertainty crawling into his expression. "We'll see how tough you really are." Just then, out of the corner of his eye, Jake noticed movement, a pickup truck rumbling down the dusty path. His heart soared with hope as he recognized the familiar silhouette. Tom, his older brother, charged toward them, his face set in grim determination. He shouted as he climbed out of the truck, ready for whatever confrontation awaited. "Just a little misunderstanding," Jake said, trying to maintain a facade of calm. But he was on edge, and Tom's presence ignited a fierce sense of solidarity. The gang leader turned his attention to Tom, sizing him up. "Looks like another farmer who thinks he's tough." Tom stepped forward, cracked knuckles flexing in the sunlight. "This land has been in our family for generations. You think you can just waltz in here and take it without a fight?" The tension in the air was palpable. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath, the only sound the buzzing of insects and the rustling leaves, every creature aware of the impending conflict. The leader said, forcing a laugh that lacked warmth, "We're just looking for a little fun, after all." "Not at our expense," Jake spat, the fire in his heart igniting as he felt the weight of his family's legacy pressing down on him. "We know what we've built here and we'll defend it." With that, a flicker of doubt washed over the leader's face. "We're not afraid of a couple of farmers. You think you can fight back?" "Try us," Tom challenged, a glimmer of defiance gleaming in his eyes. The bikers exchanged uneasy glances, but bravado pushed the leader forward again. "Then let's make this fun. How about a little race? You and your brother against us. I pair with my best guy, and if you win, we leave." The proposition hung in the air like a heavy fog, thick with possibilities. Jake glanced at Tom, and without hesitation, Tom nodded. Once the terms were set, the bikers revved their engines, and Jake felt the adrenaline surge through him. This wasn't just about a race, it was about defending everything that mattered to them. As they lined up along the worn dirt path, the stake of pride and family honor weighed heavily in the air. Bikers snarled like wild animals, cheering their leader on, while Jake and Tom prepared themselves, whispering a quick word of encouragement to one another. "Remember," Jake muttered, "this isn't just about speed." When the whistle blew, they surged forward as one, engines roaring as adrenaline coursed through their veins. The world blurred around them, the field stretching out like ribbons of gold, the wind whipping against their faces, drowning out everything else. Jake pushed the bike harder, feeling the rush of power beneath him. They were racing not just for themselves, but for the generations that had come before them. Their father, their ancestors who had tilled this land, who had fought their own battles. Every twist and turn brought new motivation, a fire igniting within Jake. The bikers were fast, but so were they, fueled by sheer willpower and the spirit of their legacy. Tom shouted, a rallying cry echoing against the sound of their engines. Halfway through the race, Jake glanced back. The bikers were hot on their tail, but what roared inside him was stronger than any fear. He yelled, doing everything he could to push through the fatigue tugging at his arms and legs. As they neared the finish line, he could feel the pulse of victory thrumming through his heart. But just then, one of the bikers shifted gears, zooming ahead, about to seize a last-minute lead. Jake gritted his teeth, knowing they couldn't let this slip away. Tom shouted, his determination a powerful force that willed them forward. In one last surge, they pushed their bikes past their rivals. The finish line came into sight, and with a final roar of rebellion, they crossed it, neck and neck with the bikers. Victory washed over them like a wave, cathartic and empowering. The thrill of success ignited every nerve in Jake's body as he felt awareness flood in. They had won not just a race, but a fight for their home. The bikers slowed, confusion spreading through their ranks as disbelief settled in. The leader shouted, fury bubbling beneath. As they revved their engines in defeat, Jake and Tom stood tall, hearts pounding with a mix of adrenaline and triumph. "If you come back, we won't hesitate to defend what's ours," Jake declared, his voice booming over the fading roar of the bikes. In the days that followed, the brothers fortified their defenses, aware that this battle was merely one moment in a larger war. This victory didn't erase the past, nor did it promise future peace, but they stood united, a force unyielding against any threat. Days turned into weeks, and the rhythm of life on the farm resumed. Jake and Tom worked tirelessly, nurtured the land and cultivated crops with a new ardor, but the specter of the bikers lingered. The quiet settling over their land felt uneasy, as if a storm was brewing on the horizon. Then one evening, as shadows stretched across the fields, the unmistakable roar of engines filled the air again, a haunting reminder of the past. This time there was something more sinister about it, a darkness that loomed ominously. Jake's heart dropped as he rushed to the window and caught sight of the gang, this time accompanied by a handful of ominously dark vehicles. Panic itched at the back of his mind. What could they possibly want now? Jake called, urgency flooding his voice. "Get ready." As the brothers grabbed their gear, there was a sense of unrelenting dread settling over them. They had fought once, but this felt different. The gang of bikers rolled up, their confidence overshadowed by a newfound ferocity. The leader stepped forward, a wicked grin flickering on his face. He sneered. No, this fight isn't over. Jake's stomach twisted with apprehension, but he met the leader's stare with resolve. The tension in the air crackled, heavier than it ever had. This was not just a battle for a farm anymore. It felt like everything they had worked for was at stake, their spirits hinging on the confrontation before them. As the sun set behind them, casting long shadows over the dust-caked ground, the brothers braced themselves. The bikers weren't alone anymore. It was clear they had called for backup, a show of force that sent chills spiraling down Jake's spine. Let's settle this, the leader asserted confidently, but there was a quiver of doubt beneath his bravado. In that moment, Jake realized they were on the precipice of something monumental, a fight that could change everything. The calls of the past echoed through him, the ghosts of farmers before him urging him to stand strong. Together, Tom whispered, a determined glint in his eye. Together, they would stand against whatever darkness awaited them. As the bikers roared their engines in challenge, the brothers steeled themselves for the battle ahead, a storm nearly ready to break, a reckoning they could never have imagined. An unbreakable bond forged in the fires of adversity would be tested, and they would either rise or fall together, knowing that they would fight with every last breath for the land they cherished.